you must remember that the primary difference between this study and all of the studies of the past is that we began with and as the high mark that God is, that isness is, the ineffable is. We began with and as the single allness of God. And then, from this perfect position, from this centered position of perfection, as the centered perfection that awareness self-evidently is, we look out as God's own awareness on God's perfect kingdom. We look within and without as God's own self-awareness, beholding the perfection God knows God is. Now, how does this differ from previous studies? Well, other studies, all of them, have fallen away into the belief. Well, I'll put it like this. Other studies began with a mortal sense of self, with a human sense of self, with a personal sense, with a fictitious fraud, with a body identity who is straining and striving to get to the high mark, to attain a new understanding of God, to get back to God, to use the knowledge that it attains of the ineffable to work some new wonder in his or her personal experience. Now, I think the essences of the world's great ideas began with the first view up there. It began with the high mark of God's allness, but quickly fell away because it is a man's normal and natural tendency to hang on to himself and to try to lift that up to God. Consequently, it wasn't long until the pure ideas, as they were originally enunciated by Jesus, by Buddha, by Lao Tzu, by Catherine, by John of the Cross, and by countless others, it wasn't long until they were brought down to the human way of thinking again, to the sinner who is struggling to arrive at God's view of things. Well, now, once again, this study starts, the absolute starts at the center and circumference of allness itself, as God's self-awareness, already pure, already perfect, looking without and within at the holy perfection, looking at the beauty that is everywhere present, looking at the ineffable wonders, at those wonders which allness knows itself to be. And then, to the best of our ability, and our ability is infinite, I might tell you, lady, our ability is infinite. But to the best of our ability, as appearances go, we let go the old position, we let go the human vaingloriousness and conceit which would consider itself God's sinful, fallen handiwork, failure a stupid, ignorant, struggling sack of skin and bones trying to get back into a state of grace by way of personal sacrifice and personal struggle. Now, there are many sidetracking activities along the way. There are many pitfalls along the way in this activity, as appearances go. First of all, it is very natural for us, for all of us, out of a sense of self-preservation, if nothing else, to attempt to preserve and protect this old sense of identity, this human bag of bones, the body belief, the ego. Yet, that viewpoint of identity must finally be let go entirely. That misidentification is to be let go entirely, totally. It must be offered up in absolute sacrifice. It is a surrender that requires the uttermost farthing, a total surrender. Now, at first it seems that it is the old sinful sense of self that must make the declaration that, behold, God is all. And this identity I am is the being that God is being. It seems at first that a very sinful sense of self has to make such a declaration, but it isn't long. It isn't long until we begin to live out as this identity and see wonder after wonder everywhere. I have discovered a transcendent tranquility. It's a tranquility I never dreamed existed. And now that I found it, I live it, because you see, I am it. Identity is it. I cannot give this tranquility to what appear to be other people. Except to tell others that it is right here and right now, theirs, for the taking. I can tell them that it is theirs for the being. I can tell you that it right here, it is here and yours and you. Well, it appears that all of us have a purpose in mind when we began a study of truth. Those who come here come looking for health, some of them, and some of them want wealth, and some of them are looking for love. Or companionship. The dissolution of desire or loneliness or something. Others are running away from something, maybe grief or guilt, or an unhappy home. Now, nearly everyone, at least up until lately, now that so many young people are beginning to hear of these ideas, but heretofore, many who have been here have studied along one of the many paths of truth. And only to find that those paths led nowhere, and that they were still without a knowledge of a unitive good. You know, back in the day when I was looking for something specific, when I was looking for a specific something or another, I regarded the metaphysical system that would give it to me to be successful. That was my guide for judging it. And I looked over the field of religion, psychiatry and psychology and metaphysics and mysticism, and I couldn't help but note that certain teachers were successful along specific lines. The followers of some were known to become leading business people. The students of others went on to become teachers or something. There were those teachers whose students were noted for their ability to be healers, practitioners, and so forth. Another group has been particularly successful in solving matters pertaining to dollars and supply. Well, I don't go for this labeling business of the various philosophies and hanging tags on them. But if a tag is to be put on this study that you and I are engaged in right here, right now, I want it very clearly known what you can anticipate as the inevitable consequences of this activity. This work, as appearances go, uncovers identity as a tranquility that is unassailable. It uncovers identity as omniscience, as infinite love. The fruits of this endeavor are tranquility and serenity, pure peace, and a love that knows no bounds. We are not in the money demonstrating business. We are not in the health demonstrating business or any kind of healing business or overcoming business. Yet all of these things, all of them appear to become a part of our experience along the way. We do not promise anything, and we are not promised anything but peace. Peace. Simple tranquility. One might call this love. And I can tell you that anyone who will silence intellectuality for a time, and listen to our words about reality, about isness, God, with an open heart, and then who will make the slightest effort to try them out, and practice them, and live them, just the slightest effort, will discover for themselves a sense of freedom, a new sense of relief and release, a sense of equanimity and tranquility he has never known before. And it will be like a newfound seed within the self that grows and grows and develops apace into a powerful, wonderful presence. Oh, but not without what appears to be human trials and tribulations to accompany it. I can tell you that there are no human desires. There are no human designs that any one of us could be seeking here that will compare to this simple, tender peace that is already the identity we are, right here and right now, awaiting recognition. Jesus didn't promise healings or wealth or the solution to problems. Neither did Buddha. Neither did Lao Tzu or any of the lights of the universe. They said to those grown weary of the world, He said, come, come, and I will give you peace. I will give you peace. Not the kind of peace that the world comprehends, but a tranquility that's beyond understanding. Not the kind of tranquility that isn't assailed by doubts, by trials, by tribulations, but a tranquility that cannot be touched by them, and cannot be moved by them. The enlightened, since the beginning of time, have told of peace. They've told of the transcendent tranquility. I do not hesitate at all to tell you that this is the fruit that appears to come from this work, for which, of course, I can take no personal credit, no bill credit, no bill responsibility there for it at all. Because this identity we are is already established forever. There is nothing new about reality. It's been here and very real all the while. And it is inevitable that we should right now be at that place wherein we find ourselves, wherein we discover this self-being I, and where we effortlessly let go all of the silly, nutty encumbrances that have appeared to blind us from ourselves, that have appeared to hide us from our heritage. Now, inasmuch as transcendent isness, God, is everything and all, must this everything and all and its holiness and perfection forever appear to remain a mystery to itself? Must it? We expect to find it eventually, don't we? Well, then why not now? Why not right now? Why not right here, right now, since now is the only time. Okay, now, what I'm saying here is that we can all expect as the fruit of this very tender work. We can expect a growing serenity, a building, developing tranquility and peace, such that it will never leave us nor forsake us. We can't feel that we've lost the light. Not when we recognize that the light is who and what we are. And I'll tell you this too, within this peace, within living it and being it, are all the things that we may have come for, that we may have begun our study of the truth for. Healings, supply, wisdom, love, companionship, home, family, or whatever else. Oh, all of these things will be seen through new eyes, no longer as objects of desire. And when all of these things are put into their proper positions, disenfranchised positions of just no value, that is, of not one thing better than any other, but just things being things, perfection being perfect, well then these things are often looked back on and found to be fulfilled totally and completely in ways infinitely more rewarding than we could have dreamed, than we could have planned and calculated upon. If we were to attempt to use intellectual terms, we would have to say it's more nearly the absence of emotion, the absence of feeling as we've been accustomed to it. Most certainly the absence of feeling as we've been accustomed to it And this is precisely the reason that its discovery is such a humanly unwanted thing. It is such an unlooked for thing humanly, because the human of us never expects it like that. And this is why it's such a seldom event, a 1 in 1,000, a 2 in 10,000, as Jesus put it. And this is why there are literally hundreds of philosophies that will do things for us, that will do this and do that, give us the power of mind, the ability to manipulate, the ability to, oh gosh. But there are so very few philosophies with peace as its actual gift. And of course, this is what makes the talking about it nearly impossible. So many come here thinking that the discovery of identity is to be some sort of a grand road to Damascus illumination. Oh, how many times I've talked about that. Well, you know, in a way it is an illumination, but it has nothing to do with wild or unearthly or even ethereal emotions. It has to do with a joy that is quite beyond sensation. It is like a very small seed of brightness and cleanness that suddenly appears in the midst of an ocean of emptiness. And the seed grows slowly and becomes the focus of our interest. And the seed is the center of our interest, and not that vast ocean of nothingness that tosses in turmoil all around, threatening but never able to engulf us. This peace is an expanding, growing center that is all. Even this instant, the truth of being is spread over the whole face of the land. Peace, affluence, wisdom, perfection, joy, harmony, happiness is as close to us as our nose, closer than fingers and toes. Even where an unhappy judgment persists, right there, right here, is peace. The truth that's spoken of by the sages is not a truth that is opposite error. It isn't the truth on the one hand and an error on the other. The deific peace that the world longs to experience is not a peace that is opposite tribulation, war, persecution. The wealth about which we're talking about is not those riches diametrically opposed to poverty, penury, limitation, and lack. And I can tell you this, it isn't spiritual either, as opposed to material, as churchdom or ecclesiasticism preaches. Now we must understand this. If we're going to ever discover this tranquility we are, erringly, by mistake, heretofore, we searched for happiness as the opposite of unhappiness. We've looked for wealth as the opposite of poverty. We've looked for that kind of wealth. We've looked for happiness in the shadow of our agony. But the tranquility that Jesus talked about is a peace beyond comprehension, beyond comparison. even beyond a comparison in reverse as a contradistinction. It's above and beyond that. It isn't the opposite of anything, either real or supposititious. What we've been doing is looking for the highest right, precisely opposite the greatest wrong. As you know, we've been taught that. Metaphysics tells us that the highest right is real, and that the opposing wrong is merely a supposititious opposite. Well, now, in many ways, in many respects, and at a certain level of thinking, this is true. But now, listen, now at long last, we are prepared to understand that there could not even seem to be a personal experience of a greatest wrong had there been no judgmental determination of a highest right. We don't have to make any such judgments as that. We find the root cause for the seeming in the unnecessary action of making either of these determinations. Now listen too to this. It isn't in the world's doing this, not world thought doing this, not world belief doing this, making these judgments and determinations, not in someone else doing this. But this one right here is I doing it. The authority lies here as the very one listening to this to stop that kind of business. Now, Jesus observed that those who are close to me are close to the fire. He pointed out that one cannot draw close to a conscious recognition of what truth is without also drawing close to a conscious recognition of what truth is not and could never be. In other words, as we begin to perceive isness as isness is, as infinite intelligence, it is possible to see what isness knows, isness is not, and could never be. That came out like verse, didn't it? But now, while that doesn't seem to be a very absolute statement, it is true. It's true. But it's so simple that it boggles the intellect. The intellect would argue until hell freezes over. The absolutist of us would say, well, listen, what is not, and therefore cannot be known. But isn't it rather strange that we can give mortal mind, so-called mortal mind, the power to dream, the power to have a fiction, a figment of its own imagination, the power to write fairy tales, to speak of dragons and ghosts and yet we would say that infinite intelligence, omniscience, is incapable of knowing what is not. Well, the difference is mortal mind believes the figments of its imagination to be real and powerful, but omniscience knows that the is not and isn't fooled by it. I've been asked the question very often to clarify the statement that those seeking reality find themselves more entangled in unreality than ever. And I've been told over and over by the absolutists that this is a very silly statement, because they say unreality isn't real, so how can one find himself more entangled in unreality? And I have answered that question by using a very simple illustration, but And I'll use it again, if I may. I don't know what an artist would consider a perfect painting. But once upon a time in fairyland, a perfect painting existed. And everyone in the land said it was perfect. Everyone in the land said that it was holy. And everyone who saw the painting was happy. Except for one person. Except for the old man that owned it. And this old man fancied himself to be a judge of judges, a critic of critics, an artist of artists. He considered himself the greatest authority in the world. And he said, "No, it is not a perfect painting. It is not. Something about it makes me unhappy, and if it were a perfect painting, it would make me feel better. It would give me that grand emotional uplift. It would leave me feeling elevated." Well, what's wrong with it, he was asked by those who saw how perfect and beautiful it was. And this judge says, "Well, I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with it. I can't put my finger on it, but something about it is bad. Something about it is just bad. Something about it is evil. Something about it is incorrect." We look out at the world scene and we would say something about it is incorrect. After all, what is this business of pollution? What is this business of overpopulation and the threat of life, of reversing polarity and all of that? What is it? Well, thought the judge of judges, what's wrong with my picture? Then it hit him. It hit him. He looked out and he saw that his picture had black paint in it. Black, the color black. "Well," said he, "doesn't everyone know that black has always been used to denote darkness and depression? Doesn't everyone know that black is the color that portrays decay, despair, death?" "Everybody knows that," he said. "That's the trouble. The picture's full of black. No perfect painting should contain such darkness. Black is bad. Black is evil." And this is what he believed. And this is what he said. And this is how he lived. He lived his belief that black was bad. "Well, okay, what are you going to do about it?" he was asked. "What are you going to do about it? Your painting?" He said, "Well, I'm going to do a lot about it. You know what I'm going to do?" He says, "I'm going to eliminate the black. I'm going to get rid of the black. I'm going to paint over the black with white. I'm going to purify the black. I'm going to get myself a little tub of white paint and a bunch of brushes, and I'm going to eliminate all of the black that I can see everywhere." Everyone knows that white, you see, portrays purity and perfection. And so, by gosh, I'm going to get rid of the black and make it white, and then it will be a perfect picture. So the old man, judge of judges, great critic of critics, great artist of artists, betook himself of a great powerful magnifying glass, and he spent the rest of his life searching the perfect canvas for little sinful specks of black to eliminate. Thus, binding himself to his own private hell, looking for imperfection. One sees and finds it if he thinks it's there to be found. The world is presently entering into a time of discovery, the discovery of metaphysics, the the power of the mind. And this will be a horrendous time, because the power of the mind will be used to influence, change, alter, manipulate. We will look out and see a world attempting to use the truth to accomplish something. As if perfection were not already the only fact of being. As if indeed the truth could be used. As if indeed there was one outside the truth to use it and make use of it. All of which is a denial of the allness of God. And the allness of God is self-evident right here, right now. How do we know this is so? Because the awareness that listens to these words is all. I did for a time have to constantly remind myself of this fact, but it's true. This awareness is all. Right here, right now, I look out and see a maple tree, a pine tree, and apple trees laden with apples, plum trees and dogwoods and grass and birds, and all of these sights are included within this awareness that listens to these words right here, right now. We have never seen a sight except in and as this single, alone, only, and all awareness. Now, the sounds that we're listening to right now, and you bear in mind that I listen to these sounds, even as you do. The I, being awareness, hears these sounds. Where are these sounds heard except within awareness, within consciousness? Now, consider where we've ever heard any sound. Hasn't every sound that we've ever heard been included within this awareness, not in someone else's? We don't hear through the ears of another, or see through the eyes of another. We see through these eyes, right here, right now, as this awareness. We hear as a single awareness. We be this awareness only. And every sight that's ever been seen, every sound that's ever been heard, every thought that's ever been thought is included within this awareness, the only one. Lo, we awaken to discover how infinite is identity. Heretofore we have identified as a sack of skin, as a bag of bones, as a pukey collection of pumps, water, as a little spot, a speck in space. We've identified as a chunk of meat with a name, and we've been saying that that was identity, when all the while that little speck in space, that bag of bones, was just an image within awareness. Lo and behold, the sense of identity grows from this little mess, this limited thing that is a few days and full of trouble. The sense of identity grows from that to an all-inclusive identity, a new sense of, an expanded sense of self, to an infinite awareness. We have recognition then that awareness is identity, not the body, not the bag of bones. Awareness is identity. And we know that awareness is the action going on, the action of knowing and perceiving. Consequently, it is the action of mind, the divine mind. This awareness, right here, right now, that listens to these words, is the awareness of deity in action, going on, without weight, without struggle, without a lot of religious and spiritual exercises, without a lot of mumbo-jumbo. Oh God, I remember I traveled around the world twice. I sat at the feet of so many. I studied so much only to awaken to discover that the truth I was looking for was the very awareness that seemed to be about the business of self-discovery, of doing the looking. This very awareness was it. The God I looked for was the very life being I. As we come close to a knowledge of what is, that is, as we begin to tangibly see and perceive what identity is, we are confronted at the same time with a tangible seeing of all that identity is not and could never be. But what identity is not and could never be is without power, without importance. It serves only to delineate what identity is. And the reason for this human enigma is very simple. Because as infinite wisdom, we are entitled to know infinitely. Now, a knowledge of what is a limited knowledge, even though isness is itself illimitable. The knowledge of what is limited to itself is still a limited knowledge. Consequently, the knowledge of what is, the infinite knowledge of what is, includes also the realm of fiction, the realm of dream, the realm of fantasy, a knowledge of what is not and could never be. But wisdom knows that the is not and could never be are powerless and serve only to delineate and give us a knowledge of what is. You know, once Jesus was asked, what is the kingdom of heaven like? Now imagine, here he is describing heaven. Now heaven is, by the standards of the theologian, supposed to be perfection, the state of perfection, of total harmony, within which nothing worketh or maketh a lie. And yet Jesus describes heaven as a field of gleaming wheat, within which someone has come and sown tares. Well, have you ever stopped to think? Well, here is the one, the carpenter of Galilee, the one called Christ, describing heaven as a field of wheat within which there are tares. Well, what is the purpose of the tares? The tares are what wheat knows wheat is not and could never be. It is the means by which wheat is infinitely known. Tares are is not wheat, just like anguish and agony are is not tranquility. But the wheat is the real. The tranquility is the real. And the is not wheat called tares, the is not tranquility called agony and anguish are unreal, but they serve the purpose of delineating, so that infinite intelligence infinitely knows what is, beyond theory, beyond speculation, beyond intellectuality. As we've seen, light is the real and the powerful and the authority. And darkness, which appears as an opposite of light, is simply is not light. It is what light knows it is not and could never be. And it is fictitious because even the physicists will tell us that the absence of light is really an impossibility. It only seems to be present. Darkness only seems to be a fact because in a dark room that we would say is dark, every molecule of air can be exploded into light. Every stick of wood in the room can be converted to light. The walls that contain the darkness or make the darkness, as appearances go, are themselves naught but energy and light, as any physicist can tell you. And even if we were out in a matterless vacuum and void of space out beyond the Pleiades, the very awareness that would say, aha, this is darkness, that awareness itself would be light itself, because awareness is the perception or the knowing of form, and this is what light is. So you see, is not light is purely the means by which light is fully known, because, my gosh, if darkness, or what is called is not light, didn't present itself on the scene, would we know what light is infinitely? Would we have ever seen the stars? Would we have ever seen the Milky Way? Would we have ever seen the Pleiades? Yet, light and its pseudo-hypothetical absence, called is not light, or like the tears, which serve only to delineate light. Now, light and its delineation, called darkness, are all one light. Just as surely as the alphabet and its letters that delineate it are all one alphabet, just as surely as the principle of arithmetic and the numerals that delineate it are all one principle of arithmetic, as surely as the symphony and the notes that delineate it are all one symphony. So lo and behold, we quit having a dualism. We don't have light and darkness. We have light, and light's knowledge of all it is not and could never be. Light and its delineation, its self-delineation, are all one light. Just like the alphabet and its letters are all one alphabet. So our dualism is ended. We find that our anguish only delineates the joy we are. But the joy we are is the real, and the anguish is its self-delineation, and not a two-ness at all. We can look at the anguish and praise its name. We can look at the appearance of guilt and bless it for delineating guiltlessness. We can look at the ill health and praise it for delineating health. And we can look at poverty and say, thank you, poverty, for delineating the eternal wealth that is real. Now, what did Jesus say about the tares that delineated the wheat? He said, in this perfect heaven there was a field of gleaming wheat in which someone had sown tares. The human inclination is to pull up the tares, to get rid of the darkness, to heal the sickness, to get rid of the anguish and agony. But what did Jesus say? He said, leave them grow side by side until the day of the harvest, until the understanding, until we understand what is before our eyes. Then he said, then the two will be separated and the one will be burned up. Well, we end our attempt to get rid of darkness. We simply understand what it is and end the dualism, the human dualism connected with it. We see darkness to be all that light knows it is not and could never be. And suddenly the day and the night are the same day, and all is light. And there is no more darkness at all. We no longer have youth and age, but we see that age is that which eternity, eternal youth, knows it is not, it could never be. The means by which youth is infinitely self-delineated. And our dualism is ended. And an eternal youth is all that's on the scene. Jesus said, "Know what is before thine eyes, and then that which is hidden from thee will be revealed." So we see what is before our eyes and know what it is. We see the appearance of death. We know that the appearance of death is not life. And we know it is what life, infinitely intelligent, omniscient, omnipotent life, knows it is not and could never be. So the appearance of death is life's infinite self-delineation so that it knows itself beyond intellectuality. And we no longer have life and death on the scene. We have infinite, eternal, omniscient, omnipotent life and its self-delineation, which are all one life, not a two-ness at all. Lo, in no other way are we able to so simply and readily have done with the dualism, the attempt to get rid of the delineations, the attempt to get rid of the notes to have only the symphony, the attempt to get rid of the letters to have only the alphabet, the attempt to get rid of the numerals to have only the principle. Lo, we see that the principle and its numerals are all one principle. We see that the letters and the alphabet are all one alphabet. We see that the symphony and its notes are all one symphony. And our dualism is ended. We see that life and the appearance of is not life is all one life. And this is so. While I have struggled with the words to find it, while I struggle with the illustrations to make it plain, I know whereof I speak, and I know. The eye that knows is awareness, the knowing of mind, infinite intelligence, not limited only to a knowledge of what is. But because it is infinitely intelligent, it knows full well all that it is not and could never be, and is not fooled thereby, isn't frightened thereby. And in those days there is nothing hidden that will not be revealed. And in those days the day and the night shall be the same.